Poor sleep. Probably the biggest bang for the buck intervention you can do to improve your libido and your testosterone. Many times it's the root cause of why your libido is low. In just 1 week, with 5 hours or less of sleep, it will reduce your testosterone by 10 to 15%, which is huge. This, my friends, is the Libido Show. If you or someone you know is suffering from low libido, they gotta listen to this. Put this on loud, because it's really, really important stuff. Now I'm gonna go into why healthy libido is important. How many of you have been suffering with a low libido? What are the solutions on the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual level? Such an important topic, super important, because libido or sex drive is a major driving factor to a healthy life overall. And as you know, at this point, sexual health and alignment in your sexual health is essential to your overall health, right? It leaks in. It's like a bucket feeding all of these different sorts of health. Sexual health and a healthy sexual relationship with yourself and another or others, for some, is the pillar to health. So really important to listen to this show to optimize your relationship with yourself. So many people in this space actually think that sexual health is the central pillar that drives our overall health. So yeah, sexual health can't be understated. So let me say this, low libido, low sex drive happens to everyone. We all feel it. In fact, it's a natural adaptation to an impulse in the body, usually stress. Libido is the gasoline to ignite the fire that fuels your healthiest self. And a low libido can really cause a vicious cycle, especially if you're in partnership. Low libido can cause frustration, disagreements, resentment, conflict, which causes more stress, and then a sympathetic activation. Cortisol is released in the body, telling your body to forget about sex and survive, which makes your libido even worse. It's a cycle. And then you're feeling like, I don't want to pursue sex or intimacy. I feel like I never want to have sex. Anxiety, especially around sex or sexual partners, especially when they initiate, and a low drive to masturbate. So when we're feeling all of this, this is a culmination of deeper things. Oftentimes, libido is the marker to see how healthy a person is. Why? Think about it. Evolutionarily, a healthy body has the impulse to procreate. That impulse is your libido. An unhealthy self will not give the impulse to procreate. The genes are interpreted not healthy enough to pass on. Now, let me say this. If you have low libido, this isn't always the case, because we know a poor sex drive can be mental, physical, or both. But there are many reasons behind it, but one of which being is that your body is taking the signal that it's unfit to procreate. So there's deeper health reasons behind it too. This is why libido is a good marker to where you are with your health. So let's get to the statistics. 20% of men suffer from low libido. It's about 1 in 5. 10 to 26% of women premenopausal suffer from low libido. And up to 52% of menopausal or postmenopausal women suffer from low libido. It's a legitimate concern amongst the population. And again, chances are that you've suffered from it or someone you know has suffered from it. Now, naturally, those hormones that really get that oomph, the testosterone, the vitality, the vigor, goes down with age. So it is a function of age in many ways, but again, we need to get to the deeper factors. So let's go into it. Let's start with the physical. One of the things that I ask, especially in men, is are you masturbating too much, right? If you're doing so, chances are that your libido is going to be affected. Pornography has a really special way of affecting our brain chemicals. So it stands to believe that if you are suffering with low libido with your partner, one of the first things you have to look at is overmasturbation. So first and foremost, you got to be honest with yourself. Now go back to testosterone. I just mentioned it. Major factor for reduced sexual drive in men and women. But especially with men, as we get older, our testosterone goes down. We know that, especially right around after the age of 30. But there's a lot of things in the environment that also affect our testosterone. Now, testosterone is the hormone that gives us that oomph. I mentioned before, the vigor, the sex drive. What is the biggest disruptor of testosterone? Well, there's two. Poor sleep. Probably the biggest bang for the buck intervention you can do to improve your libido and your testosterone. Many times it's the root cause of why your libido is low. In just 1 week, with 5 hours or less of sleep, it will reduce your testosterone by 10 to 15%, which is huge. Your libido and your sex drive will be affected with the snap of a finger. Skipping good sleep ages your testosterone by 10 to 15 years. So sleep is so important because this is the amount of time you're releasing the most amount of testosterone, right? It's utilizing its healing properties. The body's rhythm is set so when you're sleeping, you're rejuvenating and your testosterone is high. If you're skipping that, all of the beauty of testosterone and giving you that life, that vigor is gonna go away. So you gotta ask yourself if your testosterone is being disrupted because of sleep. The second biggest disruptor of testosterone is environmental toxins. And I've talked about this so many times before. You can go to any shows, go to the library. I talked about heavy metals before. I've talked about BPA, phthalates, persistent organic pollutants like pesticides, dioxins, PCB. I just did a show on PFAS, flame retardants, volatile organic compounds. Yeah, they're everywhere. The question is how are we protecting ourselves from it? We're exposed through oral, through breathing it in, and through our skin. So this is where we have to take the micro steps in looking at the stuff in our bathroom, the stuff in our kitchen, the stuff in our home, the materials of our couch, of our bed, of our rugs, and then really start thinking about how that's affecting us over time. We could have a full cup, but even if there's just a little bit poured out every single day, at some point it's going to be empty and your libido is going to be affected, right? So we have to think about which of these chemicals are the biggest hormone disruptors, which ones are the xenoestrogens. Really up at the top of the list are BPA and phthalates. PFAS is up there too. All of these are, but BPA and phthalates, again, I would talk about it pretty much every other episode. Plastics, the lining of cans, receipts, anything that has to do with plastics in your life, you gotta get rid of. Not only for the environment, not only for the survival of the ecosystem, but for your hormones, if anything. What would be number 3? What would affect your hormones, your testosterone, men and women? Is alcohol. Alcohol is going to destroy your libido over time. It interferes with your ability to feel sexual stimulation. It does this because it interferes between the signal of your brain and your genitals. They talk to each other. And the more alcohol you drink, the more your brain is inflamed and the more that this system and the line of communication is disrupted. So sex hormones, which include the testosterone, as I was talking about, and dopamine, really important. Dopamine plays into the reward system, right? That pushes you, that drives you to want to have sex. So when you first drink alcohol, a lot of you are going to say this, like, no, I drink alcohol and my libido goes up. Yes, your testosterone and your dopamine levels actually temporarily rise, which is why you feel maybe in your body, maybe sexual, maybe horny when you're drinking alcohol. But what happens is over time, as you're drinking more and more, you crash. And both your testosterone and your dopamine levels go way below the levels that you had before you drank alcohol. So you got to make sure if you're drinking and drinking is part of your life, you really need to start making plans, especially if you're libido suffering, to start removing it or reducing it at the very least. Because if you're getting poor sleep and you're drinking alcohol and you're exposed to hormone disrupting chemicals, that's a surefire ingredient list for a disrupted libido. Now, as you've addressed these things, we know that libido actually increases with working out, particularly because you have a boost in your hormones like testosterone, but also feel-good chemicals in your body. So moving the blood, moving the lymph, detoxing, working out, adding in muscle mass, reducing inflammation is all going to be beneficial for your libido. Of course, eating right, all of the foods, nutrient-dense foods. You need the proper minerals in your body for sex hormones. You need the proper vitamins in your body for sex hormones. And you need antioxidants to reduce the inflammation that is going to affect those systems in your body that are talking to each other. So diet, working out, water, we know about all of these important things. Now, I spoke about the part of the signal that you're unfit to procreate. Now, if you're suffering with a disease, your body is going to know that. And your body is going to communicate that with you. So if you're suffering, if you have all of these things dialed in, but you still have no libido, it's worth getting checked. Go to the doctor, get your hormones checked, get your toxins level checked, check your vitamins, check your minerals, and then screen for any diseases. Now look, if it's on a deeper level, the good news is the body has the ability to heal itself. But it would behoove us, especially if our libido is affected, to really find out if there's a deeper meaning and there's a deeper signal in our body that is telling our body that we're unfit to procreate. And then getting ourselves out of that, elevating our physical, mental, emotional, spiritual health, and then feeling good in our body and feeling sexual. So look for a naturopathic doc. You can look at naturopathic.org or a functional doctor, ifm.org. 2 ways, 2 resources, find one by you. Now there's a mental, emotional component to sex, right? So you really got to think about what are your body signals to your brain. If you have pain with sex, right, men and women, I'll take women for example. If there's vaginal pain, you have endometriosis, vaginismus, any bodily pain, it's going to decrease your desire to have sex. So be honest with that, put it out and say, actually it hurts when we have sex. And it's something that, of course, my body's saying I don't want more of. And nobody here wants pain unless they're truly a masochist, right? So be true with yourself and then be open and honest and communicative with your loved one. And then get to the root of healing those pains. And a lot of the time, it could be a mental emotional blockage. It could be the needing for an emotional release. Or it could be just that you need to see someone who is really good with pain, especially pelvic pain. There's also sexual trauma, we know that. But bring it to the surface because sexual trauma plays such a role in the way that you approach sex and intimacy. So if there's a PTSD there with a sexual trauma, and you feel unsafe because your sexual partner reminds you of something that triggered you, you're going to close up. Your nervous system is going to protect you. It's what it's made for, right? For survival. And maybe this is the time where you can go through the process of speaking to someone. Always remember, if you're going to a therapist, you have to also couple that with emotional release. You can't do either or. Therapy is going to show you that there's a tree there. Emotional releasing is going to get you to the root. So especially when there's sexual trauma, you have to recalibrate the nervous system. So you need to understand it, but you also need to release it. That's what I would suggest for sexual traumas around sex. And then also, what's your sexual authenticity and expression? Now, this is a big one. A lot of us are scared to approach sex because we don't feel safe in expressing ourselves authentically in who we are. What do we like with sex? Are we afraid to express what we like? There's a huge spectrum of what sex and intimacy is. Where do you fall? Are you sexual? Are you sensual? Are you a dominatrix? Are you a sub? Right? Like, what are all the things that really, be honest with yourself. What are the parts in sex that you are afraid to show and don't feel safe to show? Because maybe it's important for you to have a conversation with your loved one and say, hey, I want to try this out because I feel that this part of me wants to be expressed sexually, right? Without judgment. And hopefully you have a partner that can hold that space and say, yeah, I don't want to judge you. Let's try it. Because maybe for you, it's something that feels good for you and I want to hold that space and explore it with you. It's all about exploration, especially with someone you love. Also, are you suffering with depression or anxiety? Of course. If you're in a mental, emotional state that is really holding you down, you got to get to the root of what's causing you to be in that state. Because when the body is suffering with depression or anxiety, it's not going to want to have sex. When the body thinks the world is not safe, it's not going to want to have sex. But on the topic of anxiety, is there a performance anxiety? Is there a story that you've told yourself or something that happened in the past that has told you that you're not good enough for sex or you're not good enough to perform well during sex? So it's a really important conversation that you need to be clear with yourself and your loved one or your partner about what you feel, what your anxiety is. See, I'm talking from a lot of men. A lot of men have performance anxiety. So really talking about what are expectations, what is reality, and this is, again, tying in pornography, it creates a skewed perception of what sex looks like, especially for young people. So for us, we have to be true and honest with each other and our partner and say, hey, this is what I'm suffering with. This is what's bothering me. This is what I want to explore, and then feel safe. To have a strong libido and intimacy with your partner, you have to feel safe. Without a doubt. If you don't feel safe to fully express yourself or you don't feel safe to talk about the things you need to, your body's going to go, I don't feel safe with this person. Why would I have sex? You can try, but your body is never going to lie. Another thing, not having a relationship with your body or body shaming yourself, right? A lot of people are just scared to get naked. So you have to make amends and start bringing more love to your body. Your body's incredible. Your body has kept you alive for X amount of years, however old you are. Every single day it has kept you alive. It's kept you ambulatory, walking around, breathing. You're still breathing. You're still touching. You're able to perceive things, or maybe not. But regardless, you're here still. And that's an amazing gift in itself. Bring more awareness and love to your body, however it looks. And even if it doesn't serve you to look that way in your picture of what you want to look like, appreciate it now, and then create what your body wants to look like in the future. Again, I mentioned sexual therapy. Remember, always coupling that with emotional release. And lastly, parents out there, I know it's crazy. I know you got children. I know it'd be really hard to have sex. I have a lot of friends who are parents, so I know and I hear stories. I myself am not a parent, but finding the time. You got to carve out the time where you both can create that space to connect, because if you lose that part of your relationship, it's really hard to regain it when you give all of your attention to your children. And they need your attention. You need to nurture them. They need to grow, but also you need to give back to yourself and create that bond that you had before the children. So make sure where there's a will, there's a way, my mom always said, finding that time to create that connection with each other. There you go. Let's get that libido going. Start that fire. Get that sexual drive going. We're still young, right? We have vivacious, we have virility, we have that oomph, all of us. It's accessible to so many of us in the short term.